Have you ever noticed your memory isn't as sharp as it used to be? Why does it take longer to learn new skills now? Do you find yourself forgetting names or searching for words that used to come easily? Is it simply aging, or is there another factor that is subtly damaging your brain? This is where you might be surprised. It's not always what you're not doing. You're already doing it without even realizing how harmful it is. The majority of adults make a quiet error every day, and they do it with complete assurance, believing they're making the proper decision because they've been told throughout their lives that these activities are healthy, productive, and good for mental sharpness. The reality that nobody discusses is that not every brain stimulation is beneficial. In actuality, some daily habits, the ones we engage in without question every week, can gradually weaken cognitive function, accelerate memory decline, aggravate neural inflammation, and make thinking more challenging. Activities promoted as mentally stimulating may actually be detrimental to your memory, focus, and brain health. You see, as we age, our brains change. Our neural pathways become less flexible, our brain chemistry shifts, and the activities that used to sharpen our minds can now subtly begin to harm us, particularly some daily habits. They might seem innocent, they might feel productive, however they include processes that affect brain chemistry, cause neural inflammation, and weaken your cognitive abilities. What's worse, the damage is gradual, subtle, and undetectable until one day you experience trouble recalling important information, persistent mental fog, or an odd difficulty concentrating after only a brief mental task. Today I'm going to reveal the 7 deadliest brain habits that anyone concerned about cognitive decline should avoid, especially if you want to shield your brain from long-term damage, deterioration, and accelerated aging. Despite their seeming innocuousness, none of these habits are harmless. You'll never view your daily routine the same way after you've learned the truth. So stick with me through to the end if you value your mental sharpness and want to maintain a vibrant, powerful, and youthful brain. Your mind might be waiting for this wake-up call, but wait a moment before we jump in. Click the subscribe button and enable notifications if you're concerned about your brain health, because it's here that we reveal the truths that nobody discusses. And I want to know whether you're with me. If you're now watching, if this video resonates with you, type 1 in the comments section. If not, type 0. You don't realize how important your voice is. Let's begin by discussing the first habit on our list. It is commended for its efficiency and productivity. However, it may be having the reverse effect on your brain health. Let's discuss digital multitasking. Digital multitasking, the first habit, and the silent brain fragmenter. Rapid task switching, it's efficient, it's productive, and because of improved workflow, it has been hailed for years as a way to get more done in less time. Here's the twist, though. Although many people think multitasking boosts productivity, it may be the quiet killer of your cognitive function. You know, digital multitasking involves constant switching between emails, social media, work documents, and messaging apps. Furthermore, those switches are not as harmless as they may appear, particularly as our brain ages beyond 40. Let me clarify. Our neural pathways become less adaptable as we age. They no longer respond to rapid context switching in the same manner. In spite of its reputation for efficiency, multitasking gives the brain a powerful dose of fragmentation. How does that work? It forces the prefrontal cortex, your brain's command center, to repeatedly reorient. The little neural networks that support focused attention sustain injury as a result of that constant switching. As neural connections deteriorate over time, less cognitive resources will be available for important tasks, and you know what that results in? Forgetfulness, mental exhaustion, that inability to focus on conversations. Standing there with that mental blank when someone asks you a question. Your mind suddenly feels scattered even when you're trying to concentrate on one simple task. There's more. Digital multitasking is depleting in addition to being fragmenting. That depletion can cause neural pathway deterioration, particularly if you already have cognitive challenges or attention issues. It smolders the mental fatigue that already exists in your thinking patterns like fuel. Some even observe that their minds feel drained after heavy multitasking sessions. as if the mental clarity were gradually ebbing away. You also need to be aware of something else. If you're experiencing any memory concerns, particularly short-term recall struggles, the well-known habit of task switching may interact with it, becoming either excessively taxing or insufficiently productive. The most hazardous aspect of all, however, is this: there aren't any significant obvious negative effects of multitasking. There are no obvious indications or immediate cognitive decline. Rather, it infiltrates gradually until you eventually realize that you are unable to think as you once could. The saddest part, too. The majority of adults are unaware that the habit they perform for efficiency reasons may contribute to the yearly cognitive decline they experience in their mental abilities. What are you able to do then? It's not necessary to despise technology. However, you must monitor and manage enough, particularly if you have been dealing with persistent brain fog or inexplicable memory lapses. The harm is subtle but genuine. Now, if the habit with productivity properties, digital multitasking, can be this bad for aging brains, what about the next one? It is relaxing. It's convenient. It is well known for helping you unwind after a long day. However, it could be deceiving you. Let's discuss nighttime screen exposure. Nighttime screen exposure, the second habit, the memory eraser. Soft blue glow, entertaining content, and a sense of winding down. Screens before bed are a comfortable modern routine. They are said to help us relax, stay connected, and transition to sleep. However, the situation is different for our brains. Blue light and stimulating content are abundant in evening screen time. This indicates that immediately after viewing, your brain's sleep chemistry becomes disrupted. When that occurs frequently, memory consolidation weakens, neural repair decreases, and your cognitive function also suffers as a result. You may experience a dull mental haziness upon waking, difficulty remembering what you read yesterday, and trouble recalling names and faces. The story doesn't end there. Additionally, screens suppress melatonin production, especially when used right before sleep. This results in disrupted sleep architecture, reduced REM sleep, and compromised hippocampal function, the very brain region responsible for forming new memories. The effect is silent. You believe screens will help you relax, so you use them instead. They can be gradually eroding your memory strength. The worst part comes next. It won't hit you immediately. However, over time, nightly screen exposure might make it more difficult to learn new information and cause more frequent tip-of-the-tongue moments. Consider the devices in your bedroom if you frequently experience memory gaps or struggle with information retention. Nighttime screens may not be as harmless as they first appear. What if something even more common can achieve this damage? Screens are known for disrupting sleep. Small, sweet, and innocent-looking, however, this next habit can be causing your brain to deteriorate rapidly. Let's discuss artificial sweeteners. Artificial sweeteners, the third habit, the neural inflammator. They appear naive, 0 calories, simple to add to your daily coffee or diet soda. They also have a stellar reputation, guilt-free sweetness, no blood sugar spikes, seemingly the perfect solution for health-conscious individuals. However, the majority of people are unaware of this. Adults may experience mild cognitive decline, mental sluggishness, and neural inflammation when they regularly consume artificial sweeteners. Why? Because sweeteners like aspartame, sucralose, and saccharin contain compounds that can be damaging to brain tissue in high concentrations. Substances that cross the blood-brain barrier and, once inside your neural tissue, trigger inflammatory responses. The actual damage begins then, particularly in the hippocampus, frontal lobe, and areas responsible for executive function. These compounds can accumulate in neural tissue, causing an intermittent mental fog and reduced cognitive processing speed. That nagging inability to find the right words, that unexpected difficulty in following complex conversations. It may be something as minor as your daily sugar-free beverages causing your neural inflammation to rise. Furthermore, it doesn't end there. Your brain's chronic inflammation is also fueled by these compounds. This entails slower thinking, increased mental fatigue, and reduced cognitive flexibility. Artificial sweeteners are also far too simple to overuse. They're in so many health products, they're not obvious. Before you realize it, though, you've consumed dozens of servings throughout your week. Therefore, even while sweeteners could appear like a health-conscious choice, they may subtly weaken your memory, reduce your mental clarity, and make your thinking less sharp as you age. You now know what can be hidden behind that zero-calorie sweetness. If you've been consuming artificial sweeteners on a regular basis and have been experiencing increasing mental cloudiness and forgetfulness, however, there are other seemingly beneficial habits that can be harmful. Another is constant, overwhelming, and renowned for keeping you informed. Don't be duped, though. On the inside, it functions like cognitive overload, even though it feels like staying connected. Let's discuss information overload. Information overload, the fourth habit, the attention destroyer. Endless news feeds, constant notifications. A representation of staying informed and connected. Is it possible that this flood of information is subtly damaging your brain function? Isn't that odd, since everyone agrees that staying informed is important, it feels necessary, has educational value, and is primarily about knowledge? Here's the secret, though. The attentional capacity is extremely limited for human brains. This indicates that it quickly overwhelms neural processing systems, much like trying to drink from a fire hose. Additionally, older brains suffer significant harm from this constant barrage, particularly to their attentional networks. Let's dissect it. Your brain activates its filtering systems when information streams in rapidly. However, these filters become less efficient in aging brains. Information overload results from this, particularly in areas responsible for focus and decision-making. Where does it appear? Your inability to concentrate on important tasks, that mental paralysis when facing decisions, that weird, persistent difficulty remembering what you just read. Complex problem-solving begins to resemble wading through mental quicksand. Information overload has a cumulative effect on the inside, though it acts like a silent attacker, gently wearing down your cognitive resources. Most people consume vast amounts of information since it's accessible and seemingly important. A single news article becomes 10, then 30. Add more inputs, more processing demands, increased neural taxation. It's misleading. You believe you're becoming more knowledgeable. Your attention networks are fragmenting instead. Your cognitive resources are spread too thin. Your brain is suffering as a result. Does consuming more information actually help adults stay mentally sharp? Or does each additional input subtly increase the burden on your neural architecture?
It could be time to reconsider if the content consumption in your daily routine is excessive and your thinking has been feeling more scattered lately. Let's move on to a habit that is associated with modern work, productivity, and cognitive performance. Office work, desk jobs, and intellectual pursuits all included. Adults, however, may experience a silent attack on their brain function. Let's discuss sedentary thinking. Sedentary thinking is the fifth habit, the neural atrophier. It's systematic, it seems thoughtful. It's also everywhere: office work, creative pursuits, and problem-solving sessions. It is said to represent deep work because of focused attention. However, sedentary thinking may be concealing an unpleasant reality for adults, particularly those over 40. Physical immobility, which your brain despises, is what's behind that concentrated mental work. Prolonged sitting is abundant in cognitive work. Even though that might seem normal, it can cause quiet neural deterioration, particularly if your brain is already battling age-related changes or cognitive challenges. When you work mentally without moving your body, you may experience a gradual decline in creative thinking, persistent problem-solving blockages, that uncomfortable sensation of mental blankness after prolonged concentration, decreased cognitive flexibility, and increased mental fatigue. You might assume it's simply mental exhaustion. However, that healthy practice of deeply focused work while physically immobile can be contributing to the very cognitive decline you're attempting to prevent. This is what actually occurs. Sedentary thinking reduces BDNF, brain-derived neurotrophic factor, production, which is a crucial compound for creating new neural connections. Additionally, it reduces circulation to the brain, limiting oxygen and glucose delivery. And what's the result of that? Reduced cognitive performance throughout the brain. Every mental task seems a little harder and more taxing due to the physical stillness that spreads to your entire neural network. You see, sedentary thinking may not be harmful for brief periods. However, the effect develops insidiously in an adult with aging neural pathways and slower cerebral circulation. The most difficult aspect is that you're doing it with the belief that you're benefiting yourself, since deep focus has long been associated with productivity. However, you are now aware that it could not be good for your brain health when done without movement. What comes next then? The following habit has a captivating appearance, colorful, engaging, and seemingly social. People believe it to be a harmless break. However, it conceals something that can result in shortened attention spans, addictive patterns, and weakened cognitive control. Now let's discuss social media scrolling. Social media scrolling, the sixth habit, the dopamine depleter. It appears entertaining, stimulating, and social. Additionally, most individuals, especially younger adults, believe it is a harmless way to stay connected and take mental breaks. It seems like a harmless distraction. However, most people are unaware of this. Social media scrolling might subtly cause attention deterioration, decrease cognitive control, and executive function impairment. Constant novelty and algorithmically optimized content are the two things that pose a threat. First, let's discuss novelty seeking. Social media feeds get their addictive quality from this neurological drive. Additionally, it can be detrimental for aging brains even though it's manageable for youthful neural networks. Our attentional systems get more vulnerable with age. Additionally, the constant novelty seeking of scrolling can rewire attentional networks once it becomes habitual. After scrolling sessions, some adults have severe difficulty focusing on less stimulating tasks. Others experience a mild attention fragmenting or a tightness in their ability to concentrate. It takes time to occur, but as time passes, the neural rewiring accumulates and the cognitive control decreases in capacity. Let's now discuss the algorithms. Social media platforms methodically design their feeds to maximize engagement, even at the expense of your brain's natural rhythms. Additionally, that algorithmic optimization causes attentional dysregulation in adults with established neural pathways. Your ability to delay gratification may be eroded. Your capacity for sustained attention on less stimulating tasks may weaken. You may experience decreased cognitive control when attempting deep work. The most challenging aspect is that social media is frequently used as a quick break between important tasks. As a result, the brain is constantly transitioning between demanding focused work and highly stimulating attention-fragmenting content. They appear very engaging and harmless. However, social media scrolling may be subtly making it harder to focus, weakening attentional control, and making deep thinking more effortful for aging brains. What about a seemingly healthy, hydrating habit that can have damaging effects if done incorrectly? If a habit this basic can harm you, what about the one most overlooked by many? Let's discuss the true brain drainer, chronic dehydration. Chronic dehydration, the seventh habit, the brain shrinker. It's subtle, insidious, and honestly really easy to overlook. Almost everyone experiences this condition, especially during those busy workdays. Here's the truth though, chronic dehydration may actually be the most harmful habit for adults who want to maintain cognitive sharpness and mental clarity. Why is that? Well, even mild dehydration literally shrinks brain tissue. And I don't mean figuratively either. I'm talking about actual measurable reductions in brain volume that can affect cognitive performance both immediately and over time. Now, your body can often handle brief periods of mild hydration if you're young and healthy. However, your brain's requirements start to change after the age of 40. Inadequate hydration causes reduced brain volume, decreased electrical conductivity between neurons, and impaired waste clearance from neural tissue. Each time this happens, your brain experiences reduced cognitive processing speed, particularly in areas responsible for executive function, memory, and attention. Especially if you have cognitive concerns, you might notice difficulty retrieving words, a decline in processing speed that just won't improve with coffee-crushing afternoon mental fatigue, or even a creeping heaviness in your thinking patterns. Because dehydration develops slowly, feels normal, and doesn't present obvious symptoms, it's really simple to remain chronically underhydrated, but the consequences, well, they make it even worse. That's the trick, though. The sensation of not being thirsty is irrelevant to your brain. The dehydration damages it regardless. Additionally, over time, that chronic mild dehydration may cause accelerated brain aging, declining cognitive reserve, and unstable mental performance. Many adults remain dehydrated because they're too busy, don't feel thirsty, or rely on caffeine for energy. It is indeed a common state. However, common does not always equate to safety for your precious neural networks and aging brain tissue. You've seen the whole picture now. Despite being hailed for their efficiency or normality, 7 habits have a negative aspect for people concerned about brain health. Here's the good news though. Some cognitive practices have the opposite effect. They promote neural growth, reduce cognitive decline, and combat brain aging. Next, let's discuss those, the therapeutic alternatives and what adults should do instead. Let's move on to what you can do now that you are aware of which habits to avoid, because practicing the appropriate brain activities does more than just pass time. Your brain is regenerated by them. First, let's talk about deep reading practice, not skimming, not scanning, but sustained immersion in complex texts. These focused reading sessions are potent neural network builders. They're challenging for your brain, high in cognitive demands and low in distractions. Above all, they increase attention span, particularly in the prefrontal cortex. They promote stronger memory formation, combat attentional fragmentation, and lessen cognitive decline. 20 minutes of focused reading, not interrupted multitasking, can provide significant cognitive strengthening. Single-tasking rituals come next. In fact, dedicated blocks of monofocus can help rebuild attentional networks and strengthen executive function. They relieve cognitive load and the scattered feeling in your mind. A 25-minute session of concentrated effort on one task, not bouncing between many, can provide significant neural restoration. The movement integration approach comes next. It truly is among the greatest practices for brain health. Why? Because even brief movement breaks between cognitive tasks flood your brain with BDNF and other growth factors that reduce inflammation inside your neural networks and support new connections. Additionally, it aids in cerebral circulation, providing steady oxygen delivery without neural strain. Are you trying to find something that can truly transform your hydration habits? Give strategic hydration a try. This isn't just drinking when thirsty, it's proactively consuming adequate water before cognitive decline sets in. Electrolyte-balanced hydration helps maintain proper brain volume and electrical conductivity. It is easy on aging neurons and supports optimal cognitive performance. Additionally, remember to incorporate water-rich foods with a small amount of minerals. They provide sustained hydration without overwhelming your system. Instead of working against your brain, each of these practices supports it. They don't cause cognitive fragmentation. They don't accelerate aging. They help your brain achieve the vitality, equilibrium, and clarity it seeks. It's not only about avoiding harmful habits. Remember, it all comes down to incorporating the appropriate practices for your age, activities that are appropriate for your brain right now. And you begin to sense it when you consciously make those choices: clearer thinking, stronger recall, and more vibrant mental performance. Let's conclude with some closing remarks, words of wisdom, and a message specifically for you. One thing informs me: if you've watched this far, you are concerned about your future, your mental sharpness, and your cognitive health. And I want you to clearly hear this. It's not too late for you to change. You still have time to recover, and you're not alone in this. Getting older is difficult. The memory lapses, mental fog, and fear of cognitive decline come gradually. Additionally, they can occasionally give you the impression that your mind is vanishing. Here's the reality though. You may take charge by making sensible, modest adjustments rather than taking extreme measures. One habit, one choice, and one decision at a time. Although the habits we discussed today aren't inherently harmful, they might no longer be the best for your brain health. And that's all right, because growing older doesn't mean giving up. It's about being more intelligent with your cognitive resources. You'll notice a difference when you start thinking mindfully and select activities that promote neural growth, circulation, and brain health. Clearer thoughts, more mental flexibility, smoother recall, and lighter cognitive effort. That's the point of this guidance, not fear or limitation. I'd like to hear from you now. Tell us what you learned today and what change you're prepared to make in the comment section below, since we all grow when we share. Let's help one another. Please hit the like button if this video was helpful to you, or if it even slightly opened your eyes. Click subscribe to ensure you don't overlook any information that could alter your brain health. Turn on the bell before you leave, and please input 1 if this video was useful. If not, type 0. You may not realize how important your comment is. Remain mentally sharp and vigilant, and never forget that your future is carried by your brain.